More of a team player? I echoed, keeping my voice steady while my nails bit into my palm beneath the desk. Across from me, my manager Helen McBride sat in her corner office overlooking downtown Chicago. Mid-50s, blazer too tight, smile too polished. She leaned back, her tone syrupy. "Camille, you're brilliant. But Rachel? She's got charm. People like being around her. She's just easier. Easier. Not more capable, not more accomplished, just easier." I was 41 now. I'd joined Westlake Strategies at 35, leaving behind a teaching job and plunging into corporate life with everything I had. 6 years of midnight reports, last-minute presentations, and salvaging client accounts no one else could touch. I'd doubled our Midwest portfolio, redesigned a training system, and saved the company nearly $2 million, 0 cents in operational waste. But Rachel, with her lunch selfies and carefully curated girl boss quotes, was getting the promotion. I watched Helen pretend to shuffle papers, waited for me to thank her, to be gracious. Instead, I slid a crisp white envelope onto her desk. "I appreciate the feedback," I said with a calm smile. "Here's my resignation, effective 2 weeks from today." Helen's composure faltered. "Camille, wait, let's talk this through." "No need," I said. "You were clear, and I am focused on outcomes. That's why I'm leaving." What she didn't know, what no one had noticed, is that while Rachel was busy pleasing, I'd been building my own leadership development firm. Fully registered, quietly growing, profitable since Q2. I didn't lose today. I just outgrew the room. If you felt every word like it was your own story, don't forget to subscribe and follow along, because what Camille does next will prove that walking away isn't giving up, it's leveling up. Something that would make Helen's promotion decision look like the farce it truly was. As I stepped out of her office, I felt the shift ripple through the River North floor of Westlake Strategies. Heads turned, conversations quieted. And I knew Rachel was already imagining where she'd hang her girl boss poster above my old desk. But I moved with calm purpose, returning to my space like it was just another Monday, because tucked inside that resignation envelope was a second document, one that would make Helen choke on her artisan latte. The following 2 weeks, theater. Rachel swanned through the bullpen with a latte in hand and a spotlight in her mind. On the 4th day, she leaned over my cubicle wall, lips curled in a smug half smile. "Camille, I hope you're not too disappointed. I mean, I know you really wanted that spot." I met her gaze briefly, while quietly backing up 3 years' worth of metrics, training manuals, and workflow optimizations, not to take, but to document. Every dollar saved, every system I designed, every outcome attributed to my team. "No hard feelings at all, Rachel," I said, smiling coolly. "You'll shine." She left, satisfied, but she didn't know what those results were built on. 3 years ago, in frustration, I'd started developing my own adaptive team performance software, not on company time, not with their tools. And last week, the patent was approved. That second page of my resignation detailed its impact, millions in revenue and retention tied directly to my IP. 1 week later, I got an email from Jared Lewis, CEO of Architect Solutions, our top competitor. Over coffee, he offered me more than a role. He offered equity, autonomy, a future. He slid a contract across the table. "We've been waiting for someone like you," Jared said, his tone steady, sincere. "Someone who understands that outcomes, not optics, build legacies." As I signed the partnership agreement, something shifted inside me. This was what real recognition felt like. Not applause for appearances, but respect for substance. On my final day at Westlake Strategies, just as I returned my access badge, Helen called me into her glass-walled office one last time. The polished calm she always wore had cracked. Her voice trembled. "Camille, we need to discuss the report you attached to your resignation." She held up the printed document with stiff fingers. "Why didn't you ever tell us about this platform you built?" I sat down across from her, slowly straightening the hem of my navy blazer. I did, I replied. 3 separate proposals over the last 2 years. You dismissed each one, said your priority was improving interpersonal chemistry across departments. Her eyes scanned the pages, color draining from her face as she absorbed the data. Operational savings, automated workflows, predictive project forecasting. And this is? Patented? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Filed last fall, fully approved, and I've accepted an equity partnership at RK Tech Solutions. They're already preparing to scale it firm-wide. Helen exhaled sharply. Architect? Camille, no. You can't. That's our primary competitor in the Midwest. What about loyalty? I tilted my head slightly. Loyalty? You mean when you rewarded Rachel's charm over my contributions? Or when you sidelined my proposals because I didn't host enough happy hours? She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait. If you'd valued output instead of office politics, we wouldn't be here. We'll match their offer. Senior Vice President, just stay. I stood. It was never about the title, it was about being valued. As I left, I heard the frantic dialing behind me, but the damage already done. If you believe respect should be earned, not begged for, and you're ready to see what Camille builds next, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the chapter where she goes from underestimated to unstoppable. The patent was mine. The ink on the partnership agreement? Dry. And as for Rachel, well, she was about to learn the hard way that charisma can open doors, but only substance keeps them from slamming shut. That evening, as I packed up the last of my things, I spotted a sticky note left on my monitor. Sad to see you go. Stay in touch. Rachel. I smirked, crumpled it, and tossed it into the bin. She'd hear my name again soon enough. In fact, the whole industry would. My first day at Architect Solutions felt like I'd stepped into a different universe. Gone were the beige walls and passive-aggressive Slack threads. My new office overlooked Lake Michigan, floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek design, and a nameplate on the door that read, Camille Bennett, Partner, Strategy, and Systems Innovation. But the real shift wasn't the title. It was the respect. Jared Lewis, the CEO, held a full all-hands meeting to welcome me. But it wasn't a typical onboarding speech. He told my story. He spoke about the platform I'd developed, its measurable impact, and how it had already changed how firms operate. Camille isn't here to fill a role, Jared said. She's here to lead a new frontier. Her work has saved millions. It's brilliant, it's proven, and it's just the beginning. At Westlake, I was a ghost behind the curtain. At Architect, I was the architect in the spotlight. And then, 3 months later, came the moment that sealed it. Mid-strategy workshop, my phone buzzed. A message from Tariq Henderson, one of the few sharp minds left at Westlake. Check the news, something big just dropped. I slipped into my office and pulled up the headline. Westlake Strategies loses 30% of clients after Q2 systems breakdown. The article was brutal. Missed deadlines, ballooning budgets, 3 flagship clients. Gone. The report described Westlake's internal systems as fractured, outdated, and alarmingly dependent on undocumented processes. But one quote hit home, from a former client of mine. Service has collapsed, said Thomas Kwan, CEO of Terra Nova Solutions. We once trusted Westlake with enterprise-level integrations. Now, they can't even deliver on basic timelines. It's like the backbone of their operations disappeared. I smiled. Ted, I was that backbone, the system they'd undervalued, dismissed, and handed off to someone with zero understanding of how to sustain it. A second buzz, this time from Tariq. Rachel's having a full-blown meltdown in the break room. I leaned back, sunlight reflecting off the lake and spilling into my office. I didn't need revenge. I had results. If you've ever been dismissed, sidelined, or passed over for someone louder but far less capable, subscribe to the channel because Camille's rise is just getting started, and what comes next will shift the whole industry. Rachel had spent years mimicking competence. repeating buzzwords, smiling her way into rooms she didn't deserve to be in. But now, she was exposed? And Helen, who gambled on appearance over ability, was watching her decision unravel in real time. Meanwhile, I had bigger moves in motion. At Architect, my system wasn't just running, it was revolutionizing. Project timelines were cut by 52%. Client satisfaction scores hit an all-time high. Operational KPIs off the charts. Jared had already approved full-scale rollout across divisions, and 3 Fortune 100 companies were in negotiation to license my platform. They underestimated me. Now they're trying to catch up. One crisp Thursday morning, 6 months after I left Westlake Strategies, I walked into my Architect office to find Jared Lewis standing by my desk, holding a folded copy of the Chicago Business Ledger. "Have you seen this?" he asked, raising the paper. The front page headline read, "Westlake Strategies announces emergency restructure amid mass departures and system collapse." I took the paper and nodded. I saw. Looks like they're dismantling everything. "They're finally admitting how badly they mishandled their people," Jared said. "They tried to rebuild your platform in-house, but they didn't understand the foundation," I said, already knowing. "They thought it was just code, but it was the logic behind the code that made it scalable." Jared gave me a slow, knowing smile, the kind that only comes from watching the long game unfold. "Which is why the board voted unanimously to promote you," he said. "Starting next week, you'll be our Executive Vice President of Strategic Innovation. You've not just improved our systems, you've changed our direction." A quiet warmth rose in my chest. This was what recognition should feel like, not applause for being agreeable, but respect for building something real. Later that afternoon, as Chicago's skyline glowed gold in the sunset, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. From Helen McBride. Subject, apology. "I assume you've heard what's happening at Westlake. I want you to know, I was wrong. Dismissing your work was the worst mistake of my career. The board knows now. They know what you built, and what we lost. I resigned last week. Rachel stepped down a month ago. Turns out deliverables don't respond to charm." I stared at the screen, unread emotion flickering across my face. Validation had arrived. Not that I needed it, but it was poetic all the same. The email from Helen continued. "I know it's too late to change what happened, but I wanted you to know. You were right. Results do matter. I just wish I'd seen that sooner. Best, Helen." I read it twice. There was a time when a message like that might have broken something loose inside me, when even late recognition might have been enough to patch old wounds. But that time was gone. Now, in my corner office at Architect Solutions, sunlight glinted off the glass frame surrounding my patent certificate. Behind me, a polished plaque from our highest performing quarter to date. On the shelf, a fresh copy of Forbes, open to a feature naming me one of the top 10 women redefining tech innovation. Helen's message was no longer a reckoning. It was a footnote. I clicked reply and typed, "At one, thank you for your message. You're right. Results do matter. I wish you well in what comes next. Email." I hit send, then looked around my office. Every inch of it, every ounce of respect in this space had been earned, not gifted, not bartered for, built. The next morning, I called a full team meeting. The room filled quickly. Engineers, analysts, designers. Not one person was there to show face. They were here because they cared. Once we settled, I stood. "Before we dig into our next major rollout," I said, "I want to share a quick story. Not about strategy or code, but about value, about recognizing it in others, and about never letting anyone else define your worth." Heads nodded, eyes sharpened. Now, we were building something bigger, together. As I spoke, I saw heads begin to nod. Eyes sharpened. People leaned in, not just to my words, but to the weight behind them. They understood. They saw that this company, our company, wasn't running on image or ego. It was running on integrity, on courage, on the belief that quiet strength, when aligned with purpose, builds movements. That evening, driving home past Westlake Strategies, I slowed at the light. Their once proud logo, etched into the side of the building, looked weathered now, dimmed by time and consequence. A for lease sign blinked weakly in the fourth-floor window. Downsizing, again. But I didn't feel smug. I felt grateful. Grateful they didn't see me. Grateful they dismissed what I created. Grateful because in pushing me out, they set me free to build something better. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come dressed as rejection. Sometimes being too focused on results is the very quality that makes you unstoppable. And sometimes the best way to respond to being underestimated is to build something so impactful they can't look away. My phone buzzed. A message from Tarut lit up the screen. Westlake's board is asking about you. They're wondering if you'd consider coming back as CEO. I stared at the screen, then typed back slowly. Appreciate it, Tariq. But I'm exactly where I need to be. Because real success isn't about going back to prove anyone wrong. And it's about proving yourself right. It's about standing firm in your own value, especially when no one else does. It's about refusing to shrink for someone else's comfort and choosing to rise for your own purpose. And that's where the story really begins. As I pulled into the garage of my Lincoln Park townhome, I found myself thinking about all the other Camillas out there. Quiet professionals doing exceptional work, constantly passed over because they don't shout the loudest or play the political game. Maybe this story, the one I lived, will reach one of them. Maybe it will be the sign they need to stop waiting for approval and start building without it. Because sometimes rejection isn't a dead end, it's a redirection. You take the dismissal, you take the silence, and you turn it into momentum, into systems, platforms, and legacies that prove your too much was always just code for you're beyond what they could handle. That night, sitting in my home office reviewing global licensing proposals for the system I once built in secret, I felt a deep sense of peace. Above my desk, framed in matte black, was the quote Helen once tossed at me like an insult. You're too focused on results. She wasn't wrong. That focus, it's exactly what brought me here. To leadership, to innovation, to clarity, to the place I was always meant to stand, on my own terms. If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. This story wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's ever been told they were too much, too focused, too serious, or just not enough in all the wrong ways. If you saw yourself in my journey, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you are in your own story, because I know how lonely it can feel when you're doing the work, getting the results, but still getting passed over. Been there. And I promise you, you're not invisible, you're not imagining it, you're not asking for too much, when all you want is to be respected for what you bring to the table. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing, not just to follow what happens next, but to become part of a community that believes in quiet strength, in earned success, in resilience without spectacle. We're building something here, for people like us. And if I could offer one piece of advice, it's this: stop waiting for permission. Stop shrinking to fit their comfort. Don't let someone else's inability to see your value become the reason you stop believing in it yourself. Use their doubt as fuel. Use their silence as space to create. Keep showing up, keep building, because one day they'll realize what they lost, and by then you'll already be somewhere better, somewhere built by your own two hands. This is your sign. This is your moment. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to prove yourself right. And I'll be right here cheering you on.